She was a beautiful single mom, working hard to make ends meet.
She was a lovable person, very friendly, outgoing. She's always been a hard worker, always.
So it only made sense that she'd meet the man of her dreams on the job.
Can I take you out sometime?
I'd love that.
As they grew to know each other, they became an item.
She thought she had this picturesque future ahead of her.
But that picturesque future crumbles in a matter of seconds.
They observed a young woman lying on the ground in a pool of blood. She'd been shot 5 times in her upper torso.
They observed a white male on the front porch.
The house was completely ransacked.
What initially appears to be a simple robbery gone wrong is anything but.
This is where I need you to be honest with me.
He was actually having an affair.
I definitely felt like there was jealousy there.
Hey, come listen to this.
Both of them, snakes. They trying to put it all on me.
He told me he had killed someone.
It is diabolical. Absolute malice, absolute deprivation.
Yo, bro, wanna hear a crazy story?
She was definitely more than my best friend. She was more like my sister.
No, stop.
The levels are in like this. I swear to God, it was.
March 4th, 2015, Warrenton, Georgia. It's a quiet Wednesday morning in this charming town situated 100 miles east of Atlanta.
Warrenton, Georgia is between 5,000 and 6,000 population-wise. So it is a very, very small community.
Does it have crimes there? Yes. Are crimes very prevalent there? No.
Most people there are just good old calm country folks that go to work and come home and enjoy life.
At 11 a.m., Warrenton resident Donnie Brock is driving past his cousin's home when something catches him off guard.
As he approaches the home, he sees 2 men sprint across the street and get into a silver pickup truck before speeding off.
But that's not all.
He sees an individual lying motionless on the front porch of that residence.
Oh my God.
Donnie immediately calls his cousin, Sam Murphy, who owns the home.
Yo. Man, I think there's a dead body on your front porch.
What? Yo, call police. I'll be over there as soon as I can.
Donnie hangs up with his cousin and makes the call to 911.
Yes, hi. We need some assistance on Mitchell Road.
When law enforcement arrived at the residence, they observed a white male on the front porch.
He's laying in a pool of blood and looks to have several gunshot wounds.
No pulse.
It's clear he has succumbed to his injuries. There is no use trying to save him.
Let's clear the home.
Not knowing what they'll find inside, police open the front door with guns drawn, keeping their eyes peeled for a possible suspect.
The house was completely ransacked. Items were completely turned upside down, drawers pulled out, stuff dumped on the floor.
Someone or some people were going through drawers and flipping over the beds and like they were searching for something.
And in the master bedroom, police realize they have a second victim on their hands.
They observed a young woman lying on the ground in a pool of blood. She'd been shot 5 times in her upper torso.
There were zip ties placed around her wrist.
They determined that she did not have a pulse.
We've got another victim in here, guys.
But who is she?
Where's Tanisha? Is she okay?
When the homeowner Sam Murphy arrives at the crime scene, investigators learn the female victim is his girlfriend, Tanisha Posley.
He's completely distraught. He says she was the love of his life.
28-year-old Tanisha Posley was the full package.
She was beautiful and stood out because of her looks, but she also had this incredibly warm personality.
She was a lovable person, very friendly, outgoing, loved to do hair, loved kids, loved spending time with her nieces.
She had a 9-year-old daughter that she had given birth to as a teenager, and that little girl was her whole world.
She had her daughter in January of 2006, and she loved her daughter. They were very close.
As a young single mom, Tanisha worked hard to provide for her daughter.
She made the best of it by working at the dollar store, where everyone loved her.
Have a good one.
She's always been a hard worker, always.
And it was at work in 2014 when Tanisha's beauty caught someone's eye.
You find everything okay?
Yeah, I did, thanks. How was your day?
Good. Thanks for asking.
His name was Sam Murphy.
There was a definite attraction that neither of them could deny.
Sam was also a single father.
He had a 2-year-old child.
And that stood out to her as someone who was responsible and loved their child.
This may be a bit forward of me, but can I take you out sometime?
I'd love that.
As they talked and grew to know each other, that relationship ultimately became romantic and they became an item.
Tanisha saw Sam as someone who's established in life and could help provide for her and her daughter.
He treated her right and treated her with respect. That's all that mattered to me. And she was happy.
So when Sam asked her to move in with him at his home on the outskirts of Warrington, Tanisha was ecstatic.
She thought she had this picturesque future ahead of her with Sam.
They were a really, really nice couple.
But now, instead of getting to enjoy their happily ever after, tragedy has struck, and Tanisha Posley has been found shot to death inside her and Sam's bedroom.
The question now is, how did you end up dead inside of their residence?
And Tanisha isn't the only victim at the crime scene.
There's a man on the front porch who's also succumbed to several gunshot wounds.
Police need to identify this second victim immediately.
Everything seemed to be going right for 28-year-old Tanisha Posley after she fell for a man named Sam Murphy.
She was happy. I mean, like in any other relationship, you have problems. But for the most part, she was happy.
But now, Georgia police are at the couple's rural Warren County home, where Tanisha has been discovered bound and shot.
Just before this, Sam's cousin spotted 2 mysterious individuals fleeing from the home in a silver pickup truck.
Sam seems absolutely distraught about what happened to Tanisha.
I can't believe what's happening,
We're
man.
gonna give you some time to calm down, and we'll talk to you later.
All right.
Police eventually take him back to the station to give a statement.
Meanwhile, homicide detectives work on identifying the second victim, a middle-aged man who has also suffered several gunshot wounds.
Found it.
Oh, good.
There's an ID on him.
The male victim is 47-year-old Barry Johnson.
Barry Johnson was a construction worker and a beloved member of the neighboring community of Glasscock.
Barry was my brother. He was 18 months younger than me. Barry was a very kind person. He would do anything for you. Yeah.
He was gentle, goofy, kinda. He loved people. He's always there for people.
He loved kids, and he was an inspiration to my children. There's really no words to describe losing a sibling, your best friend.
Barry has been shot 8 times in the chest and shoulder.
Whoever shot Barry caught him by surprise because in his hand he was still holding his cigarettes.
Investigators believe Barry's killers fired the shots from inside the home.
On the inside of the residence, you have these 9mm casings on the floor and the storm door. You could see where the gunfire had went through the glass, striking Johnson out on the porch. So we got gunfire originating from inside the residence going out.
As law enforcement continued their investigation, they observed the entry point that would have been made during the robbery.
These individuals ran up, threw a brick through the glass door at the back of the residence, shattered it, and that was their entry into the residence.
Inside the home, investigators locate additional evidence that suggests a potential motive for the robbery.
They observed drug paraphernalia along with burner phones, and they determined that this could possibly have been a drug house.
To investigators, it's clear they're dealing with a robbery gone wrong.
But what isn't clear is, what was Barry Johnson doing here? What's his connection to Sam and Tanisha?
In their search for answers, detectives return to police headquarters and sit down with the homeowner, Sam Murphy.
Sam was very distraught and concerned for what has happened.
I agree, everybody know they doing. Everybody knows, man. That's why I can't see no other. Why they even do that, man?
That's what we're trying to figure out.
That was my lifeline. That girl, my lifeline. But tomorrow, everything. Financially, mentally, everything.
Even though Sam is upset, detectives have some tough questions they need to ask him.
All right, this is where I need you to be honest with me.
Yep, I would tell you.
Okay. Have you been selling dope?
I'm sorry.
All right. What do you sell? Marijuana?
Bread.
During our interview with Sam Murphy, he admitted to us that he was a drug dealer and that he often dealt drugs from his residence, and it was not uncommon for people to come by his residence to purchase crack cocaine.
So some people do know where you live, then?
Yeah, that's cool.
I mean,
about 3, 4,
He did advise that he only sold to just a few close people to him.
Which is where Barry Johnson comes in.
What he told us was that's the reason Barry Johnson was at his residence to purchase crack cocaine.
Sam believes Barry and Tanisha were just collateral damage in the assailant's plot to rob him of his drugs.
Sam did advise law enforcement that he felt that he was the intended target.
They killed her, they was gonna down some kill me if I've been though.
But the question is, why wasn't Sam at home when the break-in took place?
That's when Sam drops a bombshell that will turn the case on its head.
I want to see a female.
He had to reveal that he was actually having an affair with another woman.
Investigators in Warren County, Georgia, are speaking with Sam Murphy about the robbery gone wrong that took the life of his girlfriend, Tanisha Posley, and another man named Barry Johnson.
I started getting all these calls in Messenger, and people were saying, you know, is it true? Did Tanisha get killed? And I just remember just dropping my phone on the floor because I had no words. And I couldn't believe it because I just talked to her. It definitely left a void because she was definitely more than my best friend. She was more like my sister.
It's possible Sam Murphy was the intended target, and Tanisha and Barry were just collateral damage.
Sam admits that he'd been dealing drugs out of the home, and illegal drug activity tends to go hand in hand with violence.
They killed her, they was gonna down some kill me if I've been though.
But why wasn't Sam at home when the burglary occurred?
At this point in the interrogation, Sam reveals a very important piece of information.
I want to see a female.
He had to reveal that he was actually having an affair with another woman.
What's the female's name?
Jeremy
Franklin.
Germanique is someone Sam actually dated before he met Tanisha. In fact, she previously lived with him at the same home where the robbery happened.
He admitted that they had recently reconnected and started having an affair behind Tanisha's back.
Sometimes they would plan to have rendezvous with each other. Sometimes there would just be spur-of-the-moment encounters.
And on the day of the murder, Sam claims he had spent the entire afternoon with Germanique.
All right, where'd y'all meet at?
He told us he drove to Rennes, Georgia, which is probably about 15 miles away, and had a rendezvous or sexual relationship with Germanique Franklin.
He was there when he got the call about Tanisha.
Detectives are eager to speak with Germanique to confirm Sam's story.
When they contact her, she's very forthcoming and willing to help.
Thanks for coming in to speak with us, Germanique.
Of course.
Now, let's start with your relationship with Sam Murphy. Were you in a sexual relationship with him?
Yes.
She essentially verified the information that Sam Murphy had provided us in that they had met at this particular hotel for sexual purposes.
So you can confirm he was with you at the hotel from 10 to 11 a.m. this morning?
Yeah, I mean, I still have the hotel receipts.
They're essentially able to confirm that Sam and Germanique were indeed at the hotel when the murders took place.
In their eyes, these two people are innocent.
For investigators, the key to solving this case is tracking down the two mystery men Donnie Brock saw fleeing from the crime scene that day. But police aren't getting any closer to locating them.
Every lead that they had, every follow-up that they did, led to a dead end.
The case wasn't going anywhere at that point.
Days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months. The case had gone cold.
And after 6 months, nearly everyone has given up hope that justice will ever be served for Tanisha and Barry.
It was hard because the entire family and people that knew her, we were hurt.
It was like I was in a nightmare, still in disbelief the whole time because you don't have closure. You don't know who it is yet. You don't know why they done it. You don't know anything.
It was just a whole bunch of stuff. Nobody had any real answers.
But on September 30th, detectives finally catch a break in the case.
I received a call from a defense attorney telling me that an individual by the name of Reggie Hines, who was incarcerated at the McDuffie County Jail in Thompson, Georgia, had information on the double homicide that occurred on Mitchell Road.
We'll be right there. Thanks. We gotta go.
Of course, I immediately traveled to the jail and I met with Reggie Hines.
What do you do? All right, you making it all right?
What? Inmate Hines informed the officers that he was bunkmates with an individual by the name of Eric Snyder.
Y'all were in the same cell block, is that right? Same block?
Yes.
Reggie says a few days ago, Eric revealed some surprising information to him.
Yo, bro, you want to hear a crazy story?
According to Reggie, Eric told him that he was involved in the double homicide that took place on Mitchell Road.
6 months after Tanisha Posley and Barry Johnson were found shot to death, Georgia investigators have received a promising tip from a local inmate.
Reggie Hines told me that he had spoken with another inmate named Eric Snyder, who told him about the homicides in Warren County.
Y'all were in the same cell block, is that right? Same block?
Yes.
And according to Reggie, Eric also named his co-conspirator.
That was me and my friend Donovan.
Eric had told him in confidence that he and Donovan Fitz were the perpetrators of the double homicide.
Man, what happened? So it was just supposed to be a robbery.
This guy already had drugs in the warrant. They're going to do this right away.
But they weren't expecting Tanisha to be there.
Oh my God.
Oh, no, come here.
They subdued Miss Posley and tied her up.
Then the two men proceeded to turn the place upside down, taking anything valuable they could find, including $8,000 in cash and drugs.
Something happened where Paul Fitzgerald's name, which is Donovan, next to the girlfriend.
Yo, Donovan, did you check the bathroom yet, bro? Yo, what the hell, man?
And Donovan snapped. He was saying, we called our real name and found her.
Donovan was scared that she may be able to identify him later on, since she knows his real name, so he didn't want to risk letting her live.
So he snapped, people and he shot the girl.
No, stop, please. You don't have to do this.
Well, he shot his girl.
Donovan.
With one murder already on their hands, the thieves were ready to leave. But that's when they heard a knock at the front door.
We thought the neighbor was knocking on the door and I heard the shots.
But in reality, it wasn't the neighbor. It was Barry Johnson who was there to visit Sam.
Sam! Barry! Everything okay in there?
He opened the door and he shot. Empty gun.
The investigators' suspicions are certainly piqued by what they're learning, but they'll need more than a jailhouse tip to make any sort of moves on Donovan and Eric.
Good luck to you, man. And I appreciate what you told me.
Neither of the men have a silver pickup truck registered to them, but that's the type of car witnesses saw fleeing from the crime scene. So there still seemed to be a big puzzle piece missing in this investigation.
Can Eric Snyder help fill in the missing piece?
After speaking with Reggie Hines, detectives sit down with Eric Snyder.
He's currently incarcerated for a separate robbery that took place a few days after the double homicide.
I interviewed Eric Snyder at the McDuffie County Jail and explained to him that we knew he was involved in a double homicide that occurred on Mitchell Road in Warren County, Georgia.
Right off the bat, Eric just denies.
Well, I didn't know nothing about the murder and gun mules and the murder. I ain't had nothing to do with it.
According to him, he's never been anywhere near the house on Mitchell Road and never said anything to Reggie Hines about participating in the homicides.
No, I didn't talk to anybody about it. I never talked to anybody about it.
So if anybody told us any information that you relayed to them about this homicide or any other homicide, saying that you were involved, that would be
it's a complete lie.
A lie.
Eric even claims to have an alibi.
He said he was in court for a possession charge at the time the double homicide took place.
I had court that day in Richmond County. And I think I had to be at 8:30. I don't believe it starts about 9. After I got out of court, we went straight to my house. I think we got there probably about 12:31.
However, Eric does admit that he saw his friend Donovan Fitz later that same day, and Donovan wasn't alone.
Donovan had his girlfriend with him, and his girlfriend was Germanique Franklin.
September of 2015, Georgia investigators are speaking with murder suspect Eric Snyder.
After receiving a tip from a local inmate, police believe Eric and his friend Donovan are involved in the double homicide of Tanisha Posley and Barry Johnson.
But Eric insists he's innocent.
It's a complete lie.
He quickly wanted to dispel the fact that he had anything to do with this murder.
He claimed he was at a court hearing for an unrelated drug possession charge at the time the homicide took place.
However, Eric admits that he and Donovan met up later that afternoon.
Donovan came over to Eric's place with his girlfriend, Germanique Franklin.
Investigators immediately recognize Germanique's name.
Tanisha Posley's boyfriend, Sam Murphy, was admittedly having an affair with Germanique Franklin, and they were together at a local hotel when the homicide took place.
But just like Sam, Germanique was in another relationship.
This entire time, she's been in a relationship with Donovan Fitz, who is now a suspect in the murder of Sam's girlfriend. This seemed like more than just a coincidence.
Eric tells detectives that when Donovan and Germanique arrived at his home, something immediately seemed off.
They came to my house, I think it was about 2:30, maybe. He was sweating, looking kind of nervous, so I was like, what's going on?
Hey, baby, go inside the house right quick. Let me talk to my homeboy about something.
All right. Eric claims he never anticipated what Donovan said next.
He said he had went to rob a house in Warrington, and he told me he had killed someone.
Well, how many people were shot?
He said it was 2 people.
Okay, when Donovan told you what he had done, was she present?
No, ma'am, she wasn't present. We was outside talking. She was in the house.
There was never all three of y'all discussing what happened.
Eric claims that Donovan had committed these murders by himself.
But investigators aren't going to just take his word for it.
They still suspect that he was involved in the crime and was there with Donovan that morning.
Back at the station, detectives take a closer look at Eric's alibi for the morning of March 4th.
He told us that he, in fact, was in court in Richmond County Misdemeanor Court that morning and could not have been a part of that homicide. Well, I spoke with the attorney, and she said it was a situation where the attorneys stand up for their clients and say whether they're going to plead guilty or not guilty. And a lot of times the defendants don't show up. And there's really no way of knowing if Eric had actually showed up for court or not.
Eric's alibi was not as ironclad as he claimed it to be.
Investigators still had a lot of work to do in unraveling what really happened here.
With Eric already behind bars on the unrelated crime, investigators move in on Donovan Fitz next.
Donovan Fitz was working at a construction site, and we had information that he was going to be at work that day. We came in, we saw him get out the vehicle, and we jumped out and we took him into custody.
Even back at police headquarters, Donovan refuses to cooperate with authorities.
He was very argumentative. He did not want any part of saying anything.
I have nothing to say to you.
He told me that he had an attorney, and of course I did not attempt to question him any further, and he was taken to jail.
But there's one more person investigators want to speak with. Germanique Franklin.
Now that they know she was in a relationship with one of the suspects in the double homicide, they bring her in for a second interview.
So we've learned some new information since the last time we spoke with you.
Okay.
Your boyfriend, Donovan Fitz, has been implicated as one of the men involved in the double homicide.
What?
Did you know he was involved?
No, of course not.
She claimed she had no involvement or any knowledge of what had occurred on Winter Road. She completely denied being involved in the homicide.
Hitting a dead end with Germanique and Donovan, investigators decide to execute a search warrant on their shared home.
They were looking for any sort of concrete physical evidence that could tie the couple to the double homicide.
And eventually, they find just what they're looking for.
Police locate several 9mm shell casings inside the home.
These casings were from the same type of gun that killed Tanisha Posley and Barry Johnson.
And when detectives get their hands on the couple's phone records, they uncover more evidence against them.
Investigators obtain phone records showing that Donovan called Germanique 6 times during the break-in.
They were in constant communication while the robbery and subsequent homicide was going on.
Even without a confession, investigators are starting to paint a clear picture of what happened the morning of March 4th.
They believe the trio wanted to commit a robbery for some quick cash.
Knowing that her ex, Sam Murphy, dealt drugs and kept a lot of cash in the home, Germanique offered him up as the perfect target.
She lured him to the hotel for sex while Donovan and Eric broke into the home.
And Tanisha and Barry were collateral damage.
No, stop, please. You don't have to do this.
Investigators charge Eric Snyder, Donovan Fitz, and Germanique Franklin with felony murder.
In Georgia, if you aid or abet in a crime, you can be charged with that crime. Now, it's clear that the female defendant was not in the house when the murders occurred, but what is very obvious is that she set these murders up. So that's why she was charged.
However, the circumstantial nature of this case will make for a challenging trial.
It can be really difficult when you don't have that smoking gun sometimes, because especially in this day and age, a jury really wants to be 130% sure. They want the DNA, and we didn't have that.
They had 3 individuals in custody, all telling conflicting stories against each other. So it was clearly a case that relied on one co-defendant telling on another.
But on March 6, 2017, as investigators prepare for trial, they get the break they've been looking for to solidify their case.
Hey, come listen to this.
They had the conversations made through the jailhouse of Donovan speaking to his sister.
Hello? What's up, sister? You asleep?
His cell phone calls that Fitz had made while he was in jail talking to his sister, he admitted being part of the double homicide.
It wasn't supposed to end like this. It wasn't, man. I swear to God it wasn't.
Years after the double homicide of Tanisha Posley and Barry Johnson, Georgia investigators have finally charged 3 alleged co-conspirators with the crime: Eric Snyder, Donovan Fitz, and his girlfriend, Germanique Franklin.
Investigators were a little concerned going into the trial because of how circumstantial their case was. None of the defendants had actually confessed to their involvement.
There really wasn't a smoking gun.
Until investigators receive a damning new piece of evidence on March 6th.
Come listen to this.
When making calls from the jail, Donovan Fitz literally confessed to the crime to his sister.
So you did the shoe? No, but I was there. I had a big part of it. Why did you do it? I needed money. I needed everything. I mean, I ain't worth that no boo. I know, man. I know. I f***ed up. It wasn't supposed to go like that, man. It wasn't supposed to end like this.
And he also talked about that they didn't intend to kill anyone and that it just happened.
However, most damning of all is what Donovan says about his co-defendants, Eric Snyder and Germanique Franklin.
Both of them, snakes. Germanique trying to put it all on me, like I'm just a crazy boyfriend. She the one who told me about it, where his house was and everything. Everybody said she was a mastermind, man. If she was the one who did it, like she had something to do with it. Yeah.
He had named Germanique Franklin as setting it up, knowing the residence, knowing the fact that there would be money and drugs at the residence. He claimed that it was Germanique's idea for them to go over there.
We need to get this to the state attorney's office immediately.
You bet we do.
When the trio's murder trial gets underway in August 2017, prosecutors don't hold back.
In the opening arguments, prosecutors contend that the crime organized by Germanique Franklin and committed by her boyfriend, Donovan Fitz, and his friend, Eric Snyder, was brutal beyond belief.
Germanique knew exactly what she was doing. I believe that she may have thought that there was a possibility that Tanisha could have been inside of the home.
For her, it wasn't just about the money, but there was a level of jealousy that the female defendant would have had to the new girlfriend.
I just know from being a woman that, you know, when you have a good relationship with someone, you'll have other women out there that are jealous of what you have. You will have females, you know, that just want your life. So I kind of feel like, you know, she knew Tanisha. She knew what type of person she was. So I definitely felt like there was jealousy there.
After Germanique lured Sam to the hotel for sex, Donovan and Eric made their move.
They throw the brick through the glass door and go in.
Before Tanisha had a chance to react, they tied her up with zip ties and left her helpless on the bedroom floor while they ransacked her home.
The male defendants attempt to steal money, drugs, anything that they could find.
But just as they were finishing up, they made a grave mistake.
Yo, Donovan, did you check the bathroom, bro?
Yo, man, what the hell, man?
What?
Donovan's real name had been used. And because of that, Donovan believed that he could not leave her alive.
No, stop, please, you don't have to do this!
She was shot 5 times.
However, before the killers could make their escape, another witness showed up, Barry Johnson.
He came to the house, perhaps to buy narcotics or to visit. He had no idea probably what was going on in the home, just really an innocent bystander.
Barry was shot 8 times.
After Barry was dead, the assailants collected a few more items from the home before fleeing in the silver pickup truck.
They fled in a vehicle that they borrowed from a friend and never looked back.
When the prosecution rests, they feel confident in their case. But the defense throws them a curveball no one sees coming.
They decide to zero in on Eric Snyder's alibi, that he was in court for drug possession charges on the morning of the homicide.
The defense subpoenas Eric's previous attorney to testify as to whether or not Eric was really in court when he said he was.
She couldn't testify that he had been in court the day of the murders, but she was able to testify that she did not have in her notes that he wasn't there.
To prosecutors, the alibi is flimsy either way.
Court is not all day, and I think that still gave him the opportunity to commit the murders.
However, the defense's strategy raises enough doubt in the minds of jurors.
In a strange twist, Eric was found not guilty because his alibi of being in court could not be broken.
However, the jury isn't as forgiving towards the other 2 defendants.
The jury was able to find Donovan and Germanique guilty.
They were both convicted of felony murder and sentenced to life in prison.
After waiting over 2 years to see justice served, the victims' loved ones are disappointed that only 2 individuals are charged for a crime they believe was carried out by 3 co-conspirators.
To do him something and then they're still out on the streets while he's not. He's gone. So I don't understand. I still to today don't understand how anybody could set up and do anything.
It's just something that you have to learn to cope with and deal with as time passes. But it never gets easier.
That's all you can do is take it day by day. But it does make it easier knowing that at least 2 of them are in prison. They will never, ever, ever get out.
And this is just a case that was an absolute tragedy. It takes absolute malice, absolute deprivation of life, and just a cold heart to shoot 2 people over drugs, over money, and over jealousy.
When Tanisha Posley started dating Sam Murphy, she never could have expected that he'd start an affair that would end in her death.
Ohio,
17-year-old Anisha Smith appears to be a typical high school senior.
Anisha was a good student, and she was very close to her family. She was very close to her sisters. She adored her sisters.
But there's one thing that sets her apart from her classmates.
She also had one child and was a good mother to that child.
With the help of her own mother, the teen mom is able to juggle all of her responsibilities with ease.
Anisha was very focused. Even though she had a child young, she was working hard in school, she had a job, and she also started a nonprofit organization to empower other teen moms and help little kids.
And on the busy mom's 18th birthday, she and her friends celebrate with a night out at the bowling alley.
They're all having a good time, but at some point, she ends up meeting this tough guy, and something about him drew her to him.
22-year-old David Bell has caught the eye of most of the young women at the bowling alley. Anisha and her crew aren't familiar with the new guy, as he's been away doing a year-long stint behind bars.
She didn't seem to be fazed at the fact that David was in prison.
David had a prior criminal history. He was charged and convicted of bank robbery.
What Anisha saw was a tall, attractive young man. Got braids, got tattoos. Bad guys can be attractive, and that was part of the appeal.
Although the teenager knows David is forbidden fruit, she still wants to take a bite.
Most young women Anisha's age get caught up in this idea of being with the most popular kid. They're much more attracted to the bad boy. David had street smarts and a bravado that was very appealing to her.
Even though David's still fresh out of prison, he's in no hurry to change his ways.
I don't think he really ever had a legit job.
His dangerous life did not bother Anisha. They hit it off great when they're at the bowling alley and became inseparable. And their relationship really continued to blossom.
Over the next few weeks, things move fast for the young couple. And it becomes clear to David that Anisha has a bit of an edge, too. And soon, his dark world starts to creep into his new girlfriend's life.
David started to include Anisha in some illegal activity.
The impressionable young teenager quickly agrees because she doesn't want to lose her man. Plus, she's intrigued.
David was grooming Anisha for his own needs, and Anisha was tired of following the straight and narrow and was willing to do anything that he asked in order to be his girlfriend.
The ex-con takes his girl under his wing, and he has high hopes for his lady.
David's plan was to use Anisha to seduce men and put them in vulnerable positions, and then he would come in and rob them.
He doesn't mind that his girl will be with other men, and Anisha is down for anything.
David approved of her behavior as long as he was getting something out of it.
Anisha was willing to do anything for her man, and he knew it.
Anisha was being manipulated and didn't even realize it.
David didn't really love this young woman. He was using her. No man who truly loves a woman would put her in a situation of sharing her body with some other man.
A few days later, the couple are out one night when they spot what could be their first mark.
Anisha and David's first victim is Corey Frederick.
She can tell by his bling that he's not hurting for cash. And Corey can't take his eyes off the teenaged femme fatale.
Anisha was the light. She dressed sexy. She came onto these guys. And when these guys were attracted to her bright light, David Bell was waiting in the darkness.
After a long night of flirting, they agreed to meet up for a proper date. David and Anisha's scheme is officially on. A week later, Corey arrives at her place to pick her up for their date. But things heat up quickly, and their dinner reservations are put on hold. David is close by, waiting patiently for updates.
While Corey and Anisha are having a good time, she's busy texting David. She's keeping him in the loop as to how this date is going.
Then Anisha makes a startling discovery.
You scared?
Oh, no.
Sure?
Yeah, just give me 1 second.
She lets David know that Corey is armed with a gun.
David and his girl text back and forth and plot out a way to handle the situation.
The plan developed that Anisha would get Corey into the shower for the two of them to have sex. And in doing so, he had to take off his clothes and leave his handgun in the bedroom.
Corey was attracted to Anisha, and he ended up getting very lucky that night.
David sneaks into the apartment, and Anisha's date's luck is about to run out.
Corey comes out of the bathroom. He's half naked with a towel wrapped around him.
Sit down.
There's David holding Corey's own handgun, aiming it at his head, threatening to kill him.
Do you want to die today?
David demands his cell phone and his wallet, and Corey can't do anything.
Corey hands over all of his stuff, and his attacker takes off. As soon as he's gone, Anisha lets the crocodile tears flow. Little does he know, she's pretending to be a victim, and Corey's buying her act.
Corey called the police because the weapon was taken, and Corey, I think, felt that if that weapon were ever used in a crime, that could be somehow used against him.
And when Anisha is questioned, she starts spinning lies.
Anisha tells the officers that the suspect was an ex-boyfriend named Josh.
She misled them as to his height, his weight, his physical characteristics, said she really didn't know how to get in touch with him, and gave a lot of just vague and improper answers. That investigation went nowhere, and it was an unsolved crime.
Needless to say, the couple's first date is also their last. And Anisha's first foray into crime is successful.
In some ways, she felt that perhaps she was really proving her worth being in a relationship with David. As long as her man was continuing to see her as an asset, she was happy. But the question was, for how long?
So after the incident, Anisha and David felt like they got away with it, and it seemed like things were going great.
Anisha is now feeling more confident because they got away with the first robbery. They're starting to aim higher to get away with even more, and she feels that their bond was getting stronger, so she thought that no one else was going to get in their way.
The couple lays low for a bit, but soon enough, the lovers are ready to strike again.
So a couple months had gone by, and this was an opportunity to get back out there and make some money.
The teen temptress is back out at the nightclub when she meets her next conquest, drug dealer Peter Koppel.
They meet, and she turned on the charm.
Anisha works her game, and pretty soon, Peter starts to brag about his nice crib.
So Peter kind of paints this picture to Anisha that his house is filled with a lot of expensive items, like TVs, a game system, electronics.
And later that night, when Anisha gets her tab, the high roller picks it up.
At that point, she notices that he has a lot of cash.
They exchange numbers, and the trap is set. Later that night, she tells her man they might have just hit the jackpot.
Between Peter having money and Peter possibly being involved in drug sales, that rang some bells in David's head and figured he'd be an easy victim.
With the potential for a big payday, the couple decide to take their scheme to the dealer. The next day, Anisha flirts with Peter on the phone. She lays it on thick and tells him that she wants to see him. The dealer takes the bait.
He invited her to his house to hang out.
The plan was to send Anisha into Peter's house, kind of like with the other gentleman, with Corey. Get in there, do what you have to do.
That night around 11 p.m., David gives her a ride to the dealer's place. He pulls over a few blocks away, gives his girl one last kiss, and sends her on her way.
Once Anisha gets to the house, she discovers that Peter's two roommates, Charles and Drew, are there.
So I'm here for Peter?
Yeah, Peter's upstairs.
She's concerned about how this is going to affect their plan. So she texts David to let him know.
But her man tells her not to worry.
David's response is, "Don't trip, they're going to die."
With David texting Anisha that he's planning on killing someone, that should have been the time for her to step up and say something, but she did nothing. In essence, she had put her man's needs before her own.
How are you? Good, how are you? Good.
Anisha gets to Peter's room, they watch movies, they talk, and they end up having sex.
When the new lovers are finished, Anisha knows she needs to get rid of him. So she sends Peter out to get them some drinks.
He asked Anisha if she wanted to go with him. She declined.
So once Peter leaves, Anisha texts David and lets him know that the coast is clear. But the two roommates are still in the house.
Once again, he coldly tells her exactly what he's going to do.
David says, "You're going to hear 2 shots. That's going to be me killing his brothers."
Well aware of what's about to go down, Anisha lets David in the house.
When it came to her man, Anisha didn't care about anything or anyone else.
She was blinded and controlled by him.
Once inside, he hunts down his prey.
It was after midnight, and the 2 roommates went to their own rooms and were sleeping.
David enters Charles' room first, and Charles is sleeping, listening to music.
David just pointed the gun within a couple feet of the back of his head, fired 1 shot, and executes the victim.
1 shot, and Charles is dead.
After David executes Charles, Drew had thought he heard some noise, but the house is so big that he wasn't quite sure.
So David heads to Drew's room, but Drew ended up being awake.
And as he turned his head, he was confronted by David standing over him with a gun.
This time, David isn't so lucky. Drew drops to the ground.
He fired a shot at him and missed. Instead of hitting him in the head, he shot him in the shoulder.
David fired a number of shots at Drew, so the gun was basically emptied.
After the barrage of bullets, Drew is wounded but alive.
Even though he wanted to finish the job, he had no more bullets.
And David said to Drew at that time,
Lay down and die already.
Satisfied he's not going to get in their way, David calls out to his girl. But she's nowhere to be found.
The gunfire spooked Anisha out, and so she left the house and ran to her car where she hid.
Get out the car.
David finds her and demands that she return to the home with him so that they could rob the place. Anisha really didn't want to go back to that house, but after seeing the look in David's eyes, she decided to comply.
After she heard that gunshot, Anisha knew that he followed through with what he said he was going to do, and there was just no turning back. Now, she had to move forward with the plan and finish the job.
Calm down, calm down.
The couple knows they have to hurry. Peter could be home at any minute, and the police might be on their way. They grab the first few items they see and run for the door. But they don't get very far.
The neighbors heard the shots, and at this point, the cops had already been called. So Anisha and David end up hearing the police, and they drop whatever they had, and they both run in different directions.
in his attempt to escape, he comes upon a fence, throws a gun, and tries to jump the fence and is caught by the police.
Police found Anisha hiding in David's car underneath the dashboard.
Caught, the toxic couple tries to talk their way out of trouble.
Somebody came and robbed me.
They both repeatedly lie to the police. She tries to pretend that she was just asleep in the car. She knows nothing about nothing. He initially said that they were walking down the street and somebody tried to rob them at gunpoint.
I didn't do nothing.
Police aren't buying his story because they realized at that point that there were 2 people shot inside that home.
Drew was able to survive, fortunately.
And pretty soon, officers have all the evidence they need.
The police ended up finding the gun that David used to shoot Charles and Drew tossed in a neighbor's backyard.
It's a wrap for Anisha and David. They're arrested and hauled off to jail.
But the scheming continues even when the couple is behind bars.
Anisha and David communicate through dozens of letters, and it's clear who's still in control.
They're long letters, very cold and calculating. He's demanding loyalty from her. He's extremely nervous that she's going to flip on him.
David is telling Anisha what to say so that her story matches his story. The plan backfires. Anisha realizes that she doesn't want to spend a lot of time in jail. She wants to still be a part of her son's life. And she ends up cooperating with police and turns over those incriminating letters.
The letters help seal her man's fate, but nothing beats forensics.
The authorities were able to match the gun that was utilized to kill Charles Martin as the gun that was stolen from Corey.
Anisha not only turns in David's letters, she testifies at his trial a few years later.
David was found guilty of aggravated murder, aggravated robbery, aggravated burglary, and a host of weapons charges.
David is spared the death penalty and is sentenced to 45 years in prison without the possibility of parole.
Charles Martin's life was worth a lot more than video gameplay. It's senseless and it's sad.
In exchange for her testimony, including admitting her part in the first robbery, she lands a much better deal.
Anisha pled guilty to aggravated robbery, aggravated burglary, manslaughter, attempted murder, and several weapons charges. With her plea, she was facing 48 years in prison, and she only received 10.
Ultimately, the man she loved proved to be her biggest downfall.
In the end, Anisha finally woke up, but it was too late.
Life was lost over greed, and life was taken because of loyalty and dedication to the wrong person.
Anisha Smith was addicted to the rush of using her sexuality to help her boyfriend rob her unsuspecting lovers. One state over, suburban mom Tina Young finds herself addicted to more than just love. In the rural town of Wyoming, Pennsylvania, Tina Young graduates from high school and is excited to start life. She has aspirations to work in the medical field, but those plans are put on hold when she meets the love of her life.
She met her husband, Todd. They were close to her age, around 18. They had their first child at 19 and quickly got married thereafter and began to build their family.
A few years later, the young couple moves 20 minutes away to nearby Dallas, Pennsylvania.
Tina was a young mom having children, and sometimes that can work because a young parent can grow with their children. It can be fun. But if that young parent doesn't take the time to nurture their own needs, then that could spell trouble.
Even before she can blink, another 10 years fly by. Now 32 years old, Tina has become the poster child for bored, tired suburban homemaker.
Tina Young was a mother of 3, and by all accounts, she was a typical mother. Stayed at home while her husband went to work and raised their children.
She is the epitome of the suburban soccer mom. She picks her boys up from school, she helps them with their homework. She's also the den mother to the scout troop. She has a routine that's getting quite monotonous and can be boring at times.
Oh my God, interception!
But it's during her son's busy schedules when they meet the Schechters. The two families both have 3 boys and instantly hit it off.
The ages are matching. The families are intertwined, doing a lot of activities together. It just seemed very second nature that these families would just connect the way they did.
And her friendship with Cynthia Schechter breathes new life to Tina's tedious days.
The two women become inseparable and become immediate best friends.
And Tina even helps her new friend out by watching her 3 boys on a regular basis.
She may have been babysitting the boys from time to time just for extra cash, but over the 7 years, she really began to think of them as her own.
The young mother appears to have it all: a handsome husband, 3 healthy children, and an extended family. But as the saying goes, things aren't always as they appear.
Tina is beginning to feel the challenges in her marriage. She and her husband barely have any time alone, and she begins to feel the distance that is causing.
It's a familiar story. Here she is, just barely out of her teens, having children with a husband. The real issue becomes that if you don't have the time to spend with one another and it's all about the children, then the relationship between husband and wife, it just does not grow.
The everyday routine of being a housewife, of being a mother, the day-to-day just eventually just really started to wear on her, the reality of her suburban lifestyle.
And stressed out mom is also not happy with the way she looks.
After having the last baby, she had trouble losing the baby weight. She didn't think that her husband was paying as much attention to her as he once did.
Simply put, there is no excitement in her life anymore.
But that is all about to change when she turns to an old high school friend for advice.
This friend actually tells Tina she knows a surefire way for her to escape her mundane, boring life, and as an added bonus, she's actually gonna lose some weight.
Tina is shocked by what her friend suggests is the solution to her problems: heroin.
Of all things, heroin. That is one of the most dangerous drugs known to man.
The responsible mother of 3 just says no at first. But her friend insists that she at least take some of her stash and think about it. She even shows her how to shoot up. Tina reluctantly accepts the drugs. Doing her best to face another boring day, Tina can't stop thinking about her hidden supply. So the very next afternoon, Tina gives in.
Tina really wanted to lose the baby weight, and that was the hook. The possibility of saying, this is a magic pill. This will help you lose the weight. This will make you feel better. This will bring the excitement back into your relationship.
The desperate housewife shoots up, and the high is unlike anything she's ever felt.
Tina becomes enraptured with the drug. It's become her new high, and she definitely is not feeling those lows. She's never felt such a rush.
Within 1 week of her using the heroin, she was addicted.
Heroin addiction is one of the worst addictions there is. Heroin can be toxic, hazardous, and deadly.
Thanks to her distant marriage and her boy's busy schedule, Tina has no problem keeping her secret under wraps.
For her, for Todd, things continued to disintegrate. She thought, of course, in using, she was going to be able to regain that love, but it's not. It's just completely destroying what they once had.
A few months later, Tina's friend makes another introduction, and this one might prove to be even more destructive than heroin.
For the first several months of Tina's drug use, her friend is the one who purchases the drugs for her. But eventually, Tina's friend steps out and introduces her directly to her drug dealer. His name was Larry Tooley.
Larry's someone who's not a stranger to law enforcement. Low-level heroin dealer, but someone who the police are aware of.
He had served time on assault and rape charges. He always carried a gun for protection.
And Larry even breaks the #1 rule of selling drugs.
Never get high on your own supply. And because he did so, he didn't make much money.
There's an instant spark between the suburban mom and the low-level drug dealer. Tina finally finds the excitement she's been craving.
For Tina, this is another world. This is a bad boy. This is something completely different from her suburban life. This is the edge.
Larry became Tina's supplier. He began a friendly relationship with her, and he trusted her. So he eventually gave Tina his phone number and allowed her to come and pick up drugs by herself without her friend.
The second-rate drug slinger looks at the bored housewife as an asset to his growing sales business.
Larry's seeing Tina as an opportunity to build a different sort of clientele. Keeping Tina in this cycle of addiction is profitable for him. He is able to develop a network to perhaps even draw in additional clients.
But that's not all he sees. He also feels a growing affection for his newest client, and a second flame is lit. Then about 3 months later, the illusion of Tina as a normal suburban housewife vanishes.
Todd's eyes were finally open one day when he's in their bathroom and he finds her drug paraphernalia hidden way in the back of the cabinet.
Tina! After hiding this for a year, it just comes to a heated argument.
We have a family to be doing drugs.
And she finally admits to Todd she has an addiction. Her husband doesn't want this life, these drugs, and its impact around his children.
What do you want? This or me and the kids?
Tina is in a make-or-break situation now. The secret was out. She had a choice to make. Either she give up drugs and work on her marriage, or continue with this deadly life.
At some point, the addiction takes over your life. So people do strange things when they're addicted to this drug, and leaving their family is typical.
Leaving her children behind, the drug-addled mom goes to the only place she knows she won't be judged.
She headed over to Larry's apartment in Wilkes-Barre. It's located about 10 miles south of Dallas, Pennsylvania.
After Tina comes to Larry, tells him about the confrontation with her husband, Larry says that Tina can stay with him.
The unlikely pair have always had an undeniable connection. And with her husband out of the picture, they now have the freedom to explore their relationship even further.
Tina had her drug of choice, and her new man supplying her. It was a lethal combination.
At the point that Tina moved in with Larry, she began to realize that she felt like she had more in common with him than she did her own husband.
And it's not long before they take things to the next level.
She feels confident and strong and beautiful and out of this depression that she found herself in.
But as the weeks go by, the lovebirds realize their life together isn't exactly a walk in the park.
The lifestyle of dependency is just starting to catch on with the couple. They are using much more than they're selling.
Larry and Tina were not able to support and sustain their habit.
I'm gonna need you to figure out a way to get some more.
They're borrowing money off of family members. Tina borrowed hundreds of dollars off her mother.
But that well runs dry quick. Tina looks to an old friend from her past life as a suburban mom, Cynthia Schechter.
Tina has always had a strong relationship with Cynthia, but since everything has fallen apart, the relationship is gone.
The women do their best to catch up.
In their conversation, Cynthia talks about her oldest son, Casey. With pride, he's 16. He's been able to save up almost $3,000 to buy a car.
Unfortunately, Tina's updates aren't as upbeat.
Tina tells her that she's just at a very low place and desperate. Cynthia feels for a friend and tries to help as best she can. She gives her $300 from Casey's car fund.
Cash in hand, the broke mom quickly says her goodbyes.
So what does she do? She goes right home to Larry so they can feed their habits.
A few days later, the burnt-out couple blow through their last few bags of heroin. And Larry comes down in a bad way.
You have any more?
Larry is going through really bad withdrawals.
We got to get going.
He tells Tina at this point there's nothing he won't do, including harming someone.
Make us something quick.
Frightened by her man's outburst, Tina must think fast.
Tina doesn't want Larry to go out and hurt anyone. She's afraid he's going to do something dangerous.
Cynthia. Who is that?
She tells him about the conversation that she had with Cynthia and about the money that's there and that it's a quick, easy score.
She explains that the parents are at work and the kids are at school during the day. And that's not all.
Tina knew that the Schechters did not lock their doors.
It seems like a foolproof plan, and the strung-out dealer is all in.
It needs work.
Tina wants nothing more than to make Larry happy, even if it means going against a friend who's willing to lend her money. There's nothing more important to her than this relationship with Larry.
The desperate duo wastes no time. The next morning, they make their move.
Tina makes the call to the home, making sure that no one's there, no one picks up. She knows at that point that they can get away with the burglary.
They make the 15-minute drive over to the Schechters and arrive around 10 a.m.
Tina pulls up into the driveway and pulls up next to the screen door that she knows is always unlocked.
She even takes one final precaution.
Tina exits her vehicle and goes inside the Schechter residence. She yells, "Hello, is anyone home?" And no one answered.
She is sure that no one is there and tells Larry the coast is clear. She then heads to the car to act as lookout. Larry grabs his gun just in case, and then he heads into the house.
Larry starts tearing the house apart. looking for the money.
Come on, money.
Larry doesn't bother to be quiet. He thinks he's alone.
But the Schechter home wasn't empty.
The two eldest Schechter boys are hiding upstairs.
Riley wasn't feeling well, so Casey decided to stay home to watch him and to skip school for the day.
While the drug dealer continues his hunt for cash, 16-year-old Casey bravely goes downstairs to confront the intruder.
Casey says to Larry, "What are you doing? What are you doing in our home?"
The irritable dealer demands the teenager tell him where he can find the stash of cash.
He told him no. He didn't know what he was talking about, that the money that he had saved for his car was in the bank.
Where is the money?
Larry's enraged. Casey sees that. Larry has the gun.
But the strung-out addict doesn't believe him.
He shot Casey once in the chest. Casey pleads with him as he's bleeding out on the floor and tells him he doesn't have any money.
Larry takes the gun, tells him one more time.
Where is the money?
Casey is helpless. And Larry shoots him in the mouth.
Upstairs, Casey's younger brother, 14-year-old Riley, is hiding and terrified.
After the second shot, Riley was very afraid of what was happening. He broke through a screen window and then jumped down onto the ground.
Out in the car, Tina hears the second shot and is stunned by what and who she sees next.
She sees Riley take off frantic. No one was supposed to be in the house, so Tina's panicked. The plan's gone horribly wrong.
Horrified at what she might find, Tina rushes into the home. And her worst nightmare has come true.
She sees Casey, a boy she's known since he was about 8 years old, lying there bleeding, all because of her.
She yells to Larry. He turns to Casey, puts one final bullet in his head, and then says,
Knowing police could show up at any second, the couple flee. Tina begs her boyfriend to explain why he just killed an unarmed 16-year-old kid. He tells her that although he only managed to get $57 off of Casey, he shot him because he could ID him.
Tina then tells Larry that she saw Riley jump out of the window.
Now that Larry knows they have a witness, he tells Tina they gotta get out of town quick.
The couple pack up a few items and hit the road. They hightail it 100 miles away to the dealer's hometown of Paterson, New Jersey.
Larry hits up a few family members, but no one really wants to help out.
That night, they crash at a cheap motel and use what little money they have left to shoot up.
After Casey was dead, it's no surprise that Tina went back to what helped her cope with life. She went back to that drug. That is the power of addiction.
Back in Dallas, Pennsylvania, neighbors contact the authorities after Riley shows up on their doorstep, and police arrive at the grisly crime scene.
This horrible tragedy taking away a young life, a 16-year-old dreams, 16-year-old hopes, all taken away because of someone's addiction.
The crime was one of the worst acts of violence I've seen in my 15 years of investigative services.
Detectives start with their only witness.
Riley was interviewed and told what he had heard and what he had seen, and that was the turning point where we were able to identify a suspect, which was Tina, and that led us to Larry.
Investigators launch a manhunt for the murderous couple.
Police question Larry's family, and they tell him yes, he'd been over looking for money, but was headed out of town for a while.
The very next day, detectives catch a break. The couple is spotted on the streets of Paterson outside a liquor store.
Larry and Tina were taken into custody for the murder of Casey.
Under the hot lights of the interrogation room, the couple tell very different tales.
Larry outright lied about all of his involvement, but during the interview with Tina, she admitted her involvement in the murder, and she was remorseful about what had transpired.
Tina must have felt a tremendous amount of guilt, knowing that she was responsible for her friend Cynthia's son's death. And now Cynthia would have to go through life without her beloved son.
About a year later, the former couple faced the music.
Larry was found guilty of murder in the first degree, burglary, criminal conspiracy to commit burglary.
He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Tina pled guilty to murder in the second degree and burglary.
Tina was sentenced to 19 to 40 years in prison.
In the end, Tina traded one set of problems for another. Those choices changed her life forever.
Tina lost herself in just her desire to please someone else instead of valuing who she truly was. Her desire to be wanted by her husband, wanted by someone, led her down this path.
What Tina really thinks is love is nothing more than the high, the seduction of the drug. She became so caught up in the fantasy that she lost touch with reality.
She never thought her addiction would get someone killed.
California native Catilla Nash is forced to navigate a very adult world at a tender age. Raised with her older sister, at just 10 years old, she's yanked from her parents' custody by Child Protective Services.
It was a rough environment for her, not a stable, mom and dad type situation.
We don't know why Catilla was removed from her home specifically, but it had to be very serious for the authorities to want to move her and place her into a foster care or a group home.
As a ward of the state, Catilla immediately begins a string of run-ins with the law.
She was quick to resort to violence. It started with things like assaults at school. There was a case where she was arrested for vandalism. She was arrested for hitting a girl on a bus.
Sometimes children who may come from a very dysfunctional home, unless they get the needed psychological care, they will replay a lot of those perhaps violent situations out in their own lives.
By 15 years old, she's had enough of being told where to live. The headstrong teenager runs away from her group home and ends up where she started, at her mother's house.
By this time, mother and father are no longer together, so she's with her mother.
Sometimes that old adage is true, that the devil you know is better than the devil that you don't.
Over the next 3 months, Catilla reconnects with her mom and her older sister, 17-year-old Angelique, who is also living at home. Back together at last, the Nash girls are thick as thieves.
Angelique introduces her to one of her oldest friends, Chandra. Chandra lives with her aunt, and her aunt is pretty relaxed, pretty laid back. The girls like to stay there, they like to hang out.
Just before Valentine's Day, Catilla visits Chandra one evening. And that's where she meets Chandra's cousin, 17-year-old David Moses. David just moved in and is crashing on her couch.
Catilla and David have a connection. The connection is that they have similarities in their background.
Really? Me too. Yeah. Back in Santa Barbara.
They both had issues with the law. They've been in and out of group homes.
And just like Catilla, David ran away to be closer to family.
With both of them being on the run from group homes, their new lifestyle was going to have to be really similar. They're both having to stay hidden from the police.
With so much in common, conversation is easy, and the pair makes plans to see each other again soon.
Even though David was a few years older than Catilla, in some ways emotionally they were evenly matched.
Catilla is riding high on the love connection. The casual relationship is developing into a romantic relationship. As winter rolls into spring, the two become inseparable.
David and Catilla had an instant sort of love affair. They only dated for a couple of months, and Angelique also spent a lot of time with them. So they became like the Three Musketeers.
On a warm California afternoon, 2 months into their courtship, David pops by with a proposition.
He said, I have a plan that we can score some weed, some marijuana from a friend of mine.
The girls are game, but none of them have the cash to make the buy. David says, don't worry, he's got that problem all figured out. They just need to find an empty house to rob. And his plan is simple.
Go to the front, knock on the door. If someone comes to the door, float some name that doesn't live there, and then, oh, sorry, wrong house, and leave.
When you finally come across a home where nobody answers the front door, you go around to the back and you break into it.
It sounds easy enough, so Catilla and Angelique agree to come along.
After all, no one was going to be hurt. It was a victimless crime. It was a nice neighborhood, so no one would really miss what was being taken.
The trio sets off on their quest just a few streets down from the apartment complex.
They picked this neighborhood because it's got nice homes in it.
They stroll through the well-manicured block until they find a house that looks empty. David walks up to the porch while the girls wait close by on the driveway. Right away, there's a hitch.
The first neighbor had a dog. The dog barked.
He hesitates for a moment before deciding that the pooch is making too much of a racket.
Out of nowhere, the door opens. And the lady of the house, being suspicious as she was, asking, could I help you, sir?
When the neighbor opened the door, I think that kind of startled him somewhat.
A speechless David is taken by surprise. Catilla acts fast and steps in for her stunned boyfriend.
She answered up for him and said, is Matthew here?
Puzzled by the bogus question, the woman tells the teenagers that no one named Matthew lives in the house. She shuts the door and the three nervously exhale before walking a few houses over.
Catilla, being that she came from this kind of dysfunctional, street-smart upbringing, was able to step in and use her wits and get him through this.
They try a couple more homes with no luck. Then, they come across a small house at the center of the block.
They knocked on the front door and nobody answered.
David decided to go back down and tell them, basically, the coast is clear.
He positions Angelique at the end of the driveway to serve as a lookout. Then David and his girl walk along the side of the house to the back door.
David turns the doorknob, he realized that it's unlocked, and they enter.
Because nobody answered the door, they decided that was the house that they were going to do.
But as they sneak further into the home, they're faced with an obstacle they didn't bargain for.
There is a 81-year-old elderly woman, Dorothy Session, who comes around the corner to startle both of them. Dorothy had been in the bedroom, and she did not hear the door.
David and Dorothy lock eyes, neither knowing what to say.
And they're surprised by the woman in the kitchen. There was not anybody supposed to be at the house.
Again, Catilla jumps in for her man, coming up with an excuse for being in the stranger's house.
They're shocked and they're scared at that point. Catilla basically tried to play it off and said that she needed to use the phone.
The gray-haired lady is dubious, but says okay, and points to the phone on the wall.
It's all shooting from the hip from there. And now she's got to make some kind of a legitimate call.
David keeps an eye on the nervous resident, and Catilla hopes that after the phony call, the two can make a run for it. That's when Dorothy breaks the standoff.
As he's looking at the older lady, he thinks that she may have a necklace that would immediately call the police with just a touch of the button, like the lifeline. And he sees something in her face, like she's going to do it.
As Catilla picked up the phone, she heard the sound of a hit. She turned around and looked and saw that David had punched the woman.
With one swift blow, he knocks her to the ground to keep her from alerting the police. But he doesn't stop there.
He knocked her down and they continued to hit her.
At one point, she said, "Oh, Lord, help me." And he hit her again.
Catilla watches in horror as the lady writhes in pain on the floor.
Catilla couldn't believe her eyes. David had gone out of control. Catilla thought they would be in and out, collecting some valuables, and hurting someone was not part of the plan.
Catilla got scared and ran out and got Angelique.
Well, that certainly was something that she didn't expect, and this was a side of David she had never seen before. Catilla was hoping against hope that Angelique could step in and now be the one to calm down this storm that was just getting so much bigger than what she could handle.
As she gets closer to the house, Angelique hears Dorothy's screams and knows they need to run fast.
Angelique can hear it clear outside in the driveway, so it had to have been loud enough for Angelique to hear it clear on the street. Angelique starts yelling at them to just, let's go.
David, let's go.
And at some point, all three left.
They leave the woman in a pool of blood. Empty-handed, they run back to the house of David's cousin, Chandra. And the shell-shocked teenagers are frantic. But they feel like they can trust Chandra, so they tell her what just went down.
David told her that he had to hit a woman while they were breaking into her house.
He was apologizing to Chandra, telling her, I'm sorry, cuz, I'm sorry. Catilla was crying the entire time.
Catilla and David did have criminal past, but this was something that was beyond the pale for either one of them, and they were starting to feel the guilt as to what had gone down.
As time passes, the tension fades. And soon the three think they might have gotten away with the attack. But just in case, they'll lay low at Chandra's place. The day comes to an end, and the teenager's victim, 81-year-old Dorothy Session, is just where they left her.
Dorothy lives with her son, and she takes him to work in the morning and normally picks him up in the afternoon. When no one arrives to pick her son up, the family gets concerned.
Then at 6 o'clock, Dorothy's family sends her grandson to check on her. When he walks into the house, he's faced with a grisly scene.
Saw the blood spatter, and then as he rounds the corner, he finds her laying there, severely beaten.
The young man moves towards his beloved grandmother as she lays still on the floor.
She had a lot of trauma to her face. There was a lot of blood.
But when he gets a closer look, he realizes the resilient woman is still alive.
Mrs. Sessions was there laying on the ground by herself in incredible pain.
She's moaning. She first tells him, I hurt. Then she says a black male and a black female did that to her.
Minutes later, ambulances and police roll in, with sirens blaring.
The investigators that came on the scene were able to question Mrs. Session. She was very good in giving them a full description of the black male and black female who entered her residence and assaulted her.
She went to the hospital, which is just down the street.
Her situation is very grave. Her brain is swelling, and that's absolutely not good for a woman her age, and that she's got a lot of broken bones in the face.
Doctors do what they can to try and save the 81-year-old grandmother. But a few hours after the violent attack, Dorothy Session passes away.
You have a completely innocent victim who didn't do anything to place herself in danger. She was just minding her own business, cooking and watching TV.
The next day, the vicious slaying of the matriarch is the #1 lead.
It's beginning to get really blown up over the news. A home invasion robbery where a woman is beat to death is not an everyday thing here.
It was pretty shocking. It kind of captured the whole community in a way that few cases do.
David and the girls decide to split up and hide out from the heat. After borrowing cash from a relative, Catilla and her sister move to a motel room, while David shacks up with yet another family member. But none of them seem to be able to keep quiet about what they did.
Perhaps it made them feel a little bit better to relieve a little bit of that guilt that they were already feeling. It really did show how naive they were. They didn't think someone else would say something about it to law enforcement.
Once you tell a bunch of people, they're going to tell a bunch of other people. Sooner or later, it's going to get back to us.
And when the anonymous tip line rings, detectives are all ears.
My partner gets a call that seems pretty credible, giving us the first names and descriptions of our suspects.
The name Catilla and the name Angelique are relatively unique names, and I was able to fairly quickly locate both of them in the system.
With that, they hit the ground running, showing neighbors photo arrays with Catilla and David's prior mugshots.
The sheriff put out all of their information and distributed wanted posters to the media, letting everyone know that we were looking for them in connection with this case.
And it's not long before police track down the Nash girls.
We got the tip where the two girls were located. They were at a hotel in central Bakersfield.
Police make their way to their location and pinpoint the girls' room.
The deputies were able to basically surround and move in and place them both under arrest.
At the station, Catilla tries to distance herself from her boyfriend. She insists that she only wanted to use the phone at Dorothy Sessions' house, and it was David who flew off the handle.
She's crying a lot during the interview. We didn't know David was going to do this, put a lot of it on David.
The reality at this point was that she was going to save herself, and to hell with David.
The next day, knowing it was just a matter of time before police locate him, David turns himself in. But he has a different story to tell. He says that they were all aware of the plan to rob the home.
Other detectives were interviewing witnesses, and one happened to be David Moses' cousin, Chandra, in which she corroborated the story of them entering the home to burglarize it.
Even though David was the only one to hit Dorothy, the teenagers are all charged as adults with first-degree murder.
If you kill someone or someone's killed while you're committing a burglary, you buy into all of it.
A lot of people feel that the penalty for a crime like this is harsh, especially when there are people that literally did not commit the crime. Somebody has to be responsible regardless.
2 years after the assault, David Moses is convicted of murder and is sentenced to life in prison. Catilla and Angelique Nash are also convicted, and they each receive the lighter sentence of 25 years to life.
Catilla would have to do 25 years before she's eligible for parole. So at the earliest, it would be 40 years old, and that's if she gets parole on her first go-round.
That's all the time in the world to regret ever getting mixed up with David Moses. Teenager Catilla Nash learned that even a simple plan for quick cash can turn deadly. In Muskogee, Oklahoma, Marcus Rowland will meet his soulmate, and the two of them will head down a road to ruin. Deep in the Bible Belt of Muskogee, Oklahoma, Marcus Rowland is surrounded by a loving brood.
Marcus's mother and father never married, and his father left when he was about 5 years old.
Marcus was a loving, caring little boy, very adventurous. My sister had him at 16, so she was a teen mom. We all grew up in the same household.
Even at the age of 13, Marcus has a flamboyant way of expressing himself.
He'll get in our heels, put our wigs on, play in our makeup. My grandma will whip his butt, and he'll still do it anyway.
And soon it's clear that this is more than just dress up.
Marcus was realizing that he was gay, and this was a monumental event in his life.
What we tend to see with children who believe that they may be gay is that because of the society that they're in and that you're supposed to fit gender norms, some of those thoughts can be very, very confusing.
Internally, Marcus struggles with his identity. He fears what he will face once his secret is out.
I'll be right there.
It's a pretty conservative town. I'm sure there's probably a lot of whispers.
The precocious youngster decides that he can't bottle up his feelings any longer. The teenager takes the first step towards living his full self, coming out to his mother.
She was a little upset at first, but she loves her child no matter what.
With his mom's acceptance, he's finally free to live his life the way he's always felt on the inside.
For some young people, coming out may be a roller coaster experience emotionally, because even though they feel that this is something that they must do, quite often the reaction of society really does make them feel like they are less than.
By the time Marcus is a high school senior, his feminine flair is on full display. While still identifying as a male and not a transgender woman, he embraces his ladylike qualities.
Marcus began to grow his hair longer and dress in female clothing full time. It was very difficult for strangers to figure out whether he was a boy or a girl.
We used to shop all the time for makeup, go get our nails done. If I had a handbag, I was done with it. Oh, Annie, let me get that handbag.
And it's not only his looks that he's focused on. The young man has his future in mind.
He had career goals. He wanted to study to be an RN.
Becoming a nurse is a very difficult process, so he was clearly setting his sights high.
While at school, he might feel like he's just one of the girls, but his gender-bending identity is not always accepted.
Marcus was using the ladies' room at his school. The people in Muskogee were very traditional, and they found it very difficult to adjust to a student like Marcus.
He couldn't go in the boys' bathroom because he was just too scared that they'll beat him up in the boys' bathroom.
After multiple warnings, Marcus continues to use the ladies' room.
You are not supposed to be in here. I told you, I'm scared to go in there.
It just caused a big debacle.
Let's go.
It was just going downhill from there.
Rather than be forced to use the boys' bathroom, the teenager doesn't go back to school. Now, he must contemplate his future, and he seeks advice from his cousin.
Without a high school diploma, his dreams of becoming a nurse was shattered. He clearly fell into a funk.
Marcus kind of went off the deep end. He didn't know where he was going to go from there. His hopes had been dashed.
Without a job, he receives government assistance checks to get by. The 18-year-old's heart is heavy, and his family hopes they can cheer him up.
His cousin decided to introduce him to a guy by the name of Caleb Sanders.
Caleb is also gay, and even though he is only 15, he's confident well beyond his years.
He seemed older, and he was not feminine like Marcus.
And the two have a lot in common.
Caleb grew up in Muskogee, and he felt like an outsider as well.
And just like Marcus, his high school career ended abruptly. After getting suspended for fighting a couple of times, the rowdy teen just stopped going.
Marcus could really identify with that. And the fact that they were both gay, now Marcus did not feel alone.
After that meeting, the two of them can't stand to be apart. And soon, they make things official.
They came a couple very quickly. Caleb was the first person he ever brought home.
They spent all of their free time together, and as a result, they developed an us against the world type of relationship.
2 months in, Marcus moves out of his mother's home and into an apartment where he and Caleb will live together.
He was so excited about moving in with Caleb. That's all he talked about. I'm gonna have my own place and my boyfriend's gonna be there.
But the boys rack up the bills faster than Uncle Sam sends cash.
He'll get his SSI on the 1st of the month and he'll be broke by the 3rd of the month. When he called and asked me to borrow money, that was very shocking to me because he had never had to do that before.
Marcus does everything to please his younger boyfriend, but the 3-year age difference often rears its ugly head.
All they did was fight, so I was very worried about that.
Marcus was accusing Caleb of being very flirtatious, and that caused a lot of strife in the relationship. Marcus would accuse Caleb of cheating on him.
When the fight escalates, the way it escalates with those two, it's no stopping either one of them. And Caleb has a very hot temper. He'll just fly off the handle.
All the fighting takes a toll on Marcus, emotionally and physically.
He was thinner. He just didn't seem like the Marcus I know, like the happy, loving Marcus. We told him we need to get rid of Caleb. He would not listen to us. He's so in love with Caleb.
Their rocky relationship reaches its boiling point on a warm December day when the guys go for a ride through town. In the car, they're in the midst of another epic argument. Marcus is fuming, and he snipes at his man. Fed up, Caleb claps back.
Marcus pulls off to the side of the road, and that's when the fight starts.
A passerby sees them tussling, and they call police. When an officer arrives, Marcus is in no mood to cooperate.
You step on out and see your ID.
Marcus knows his rights and doesn't want to get out of the car.
Step out of the car.
What? I didn't do that.
I'm giving you a lawful order.
I didn't do it.
I'm giving you a lawful order.
The officer becomes a little more stern with him.
Yeah, one more second to step out of the car.
What? I didn't do that.
545, are you close?
I know
Lawful
my
order.
rights.
Step out of the car.
I know my rights.
Step out of the car.
I know my rights.
Then Marcus revs the engine and takes off.
540, keep driving on.
Police follow in hot pursuit.
Back west on Denver.
This chase goes roughly 2 miles through the streets of Muskogee.
Back south there at 21st.
It was dangerous for everybody involved.
After mere minutes, it's all over.
Marcus spins the car out, and the officers get him into custody.
He's arrested and charged with eluding police, but he gets some leniency.
Me and his mother went up and talked to the DA, and we said it wouldn't be safe for him in jail because the way that he is.
And we complied. He had a bond set immediately, and so he wouldn't have to stay all night in jail.
Caleb is also sent home.
We thought Caleb at that time was just a juvenile that should have been in school.
Back at their apartment, the couple reconcile.
Even though they should have been on the outs, Marcus and Caleb made up and were able to connect again. But this was because they had a history of fighting.
They're happy not to be locked up, but Marcus still faces possible prison time for the chase. And he's terrified of what or who he might run into behind bars.
It wouldn't be safe in Marcus in jail because the way that he is.
Rather than suffer with the possible consequences of the chase, the pair decides to hit the road and flee Muskogee, stopping to take a breath 120 miles away in Oklahoma City.
They left town and they went to a hotel in the Oklahoma City area.
They spent several days in a hotel room, and it appeared as though Marcus was falling deeper in love with Caleb.
They romanticized it. This could be part of their romance, part of their adventure to bring them even closer together.
The teenagers revel in their newfound freedom, away from all they've known. For the next 3 weeks, they crisscross the Midwest, covering at least 1,000 miles.
I'm not convinced that they knew really where they were going.
But back at home, when the 18-year-old misses his court date, a warrant is issued for his arrest. And the judge isn't the only one waiting for an appearance from Marcus. His family is worried sick. They haven't seen or heard from him, and they're afraid something terrible has happened.
All his family wanted was for Marcus to come home safe. They tried to reach out to him on his cell phone to try to let him know that they just simply wanted him to come home and be safe.
Eventually, they get him on the line during a break from driving, and what he says sends chills up their spines.
I was like, please just come home, you know. He said, Caleb said we're never coming back to Muskogee, so we're never coming back.
They're not understanding what's really going on because they're in a world of themselves where they're in this fantasy of escape, not just from the law, but from the world.
They were clearly immature in what they were doing. They thought they were invincible. They weren't really sure where they were headed. They were just doing whatever they were doing to survive.
A month after their run-in with the law, the pair drive as far as Waterville, Ohio, nearly 750 miles from Muskogee. But they have a problem. They're out of cash. So the chaotic couple figure it's time to get creative.
So Kayla says, well, I know how to rob the dollar store.
Caleb's mother had some background working for a dollar store.
He was somewhat familiar with some operating procedures and opening and closing times, where they keep the money.
They'll go in with realistic-looking airsoft guns and stick up the store. Caleb insists no one will get hurt.
Marcus wanted nothing more than to make his man happy, so he agreed to join him on the heist.
Both of them are so young, they're making such inappropriate decisions, and more than anything else, they needed the money in order to continue fleeing the police on this adventure of the ages.
The next day, it's go time. According to witnesses, just before closing, the guys walk into the nearly empty dollar store in Waterville, Ohio, with their guns hidden. Then they draw their weapons.
They walked in with their airsoft guns, which looked very real to the employees.
The horrified staffers have nowhere to run. Marcus secures the clerk's hands with duct tape and forces her to kneel on the floor.
Caleb pointed the gun at the manager's head and demanded that he open up the safe.
But the boss has some bad news for the bandits.
It was a time save, so they weren't able to get the money.
The employees were not able to open up the safe with a combination or a key. It had to be a certain time for the combination to work.
Forced to go to Plan B, Caleb walks the manager to the front of the store and demands he open the register.
Just then, a customer came into the store and came upon the scene. She saw the manager of the store looking terrified and saw another man standing behind him. As a result, she runs out and calls 911 immediately.
The clock is now ticking before police arrive on the scene. Panicked, Caleb levels his airsoft gun at his hostage.
Though Marcus and Caleb were using fake guns, the employees didn't know that, and they were scared for their lives.
We've got young kids that have no boundaries at this point.
These guys were not playing. They clearly crossed the line and were serious about what they were doing.
Just as Caleb forces the manager to open the register, a customer walks in.
She could clearly see that there was something wrong going on.
The woman immediately runs out of the store and calls 911. The pair now have just minutes to take the money and run.
They thought this was going to be in and out, but this was clearly different.
I'm sure that they felt that they had no choice but to follow through. Their guns were already drawn, they were in the store, it was going down, and after all, they needed the money to continue to fund their escape.
Desperate to get out of there, but not wanting to leave empty-handed, Caleb threatens to kill the manager if he doesn't empty the register.
What's interesting here psychologically is, even though Marcus and Caleb knew the truth about these fake guns, it was the power that they had over these individuals that was feeding their behavior.
And at any moment, the police will be on the scene.
And if they ever got cornered and they had anything that looked like a weapon, I'm afraid that somebody's gonna die.
Just take it off. The manager gives Caleb all the money that he has. Caleb snatches the money and they run out of the front door.
But before they make it even a few feet, they are greeted by the sight of blue and red police lights. The jig is up. And in just seconds, Caleb and Marcus's month-long run from the law comes to an end.
They got caught on scene. Whatever their plan was, it's over. And nobody got killed. That was my first thought.
They are both charged with aggravated robbery, kidnapping, and felonious assault.
Instead of facing the reality of the situation, they chose to run. If you think about it, they were pretty lucky because these weren't real guns and the situation didn't take a deadly turn.
When kids of this age commit crimes like this, they don't realize the long-term effects that they're having on their lives. It's fun right now, but when you're sitting in a 4x8 cell in 10 years from now, it's not gonna be fun.
After a week in jail, the severity of his actions finally sinks in.
He told me he was relieved that it was over and that he was really sorry for everything he had did. He was very remorseful for his crimes.
Marcus pleads guilty to robbery and 2 counts of kidnapping and is sentenced to 8 years in prison. Because Caleb is still a minor, he admits to aggravated robbery and 2 counts of kidnapping in an Ohio juvenile court. He receives a suspended sentence and is sent back to Oklahoma.
They assumed that Marcus was calling the shots because he was the oldest of them both.
Through it all, Marcus still wishes he could be with the love of his life.
He asked me to find where Caleb was at and to write Caleb and tell Caleb that he loved him and missed him and that he can't wait for them to be together again. And I told him I absolutely was not going to do it.
First loves are hard to forget, and these two had a very strong connection, part of it because they were gay in a very conservative area.
And Marcus will have the 8 years behind bars to cure himself of his tainted love for Caleb.
I think people tell themselves that they may be doing criminal activity for love, but that's not love.
If somebody loves you, they wouldn't take you through that kind of stuff and tell you to do that. And it's not worth it.